Thank you very much, everybody. It's an honor to share the view of the climate change, price volatility, and food security. And I think I wouldn't talk much on the impact and causes. I think previous speaker mentioned it a lot, and also there will be another 4 Indonesian speakers in the afternoon, so they will share you with the data and everything. 2 things that I wanted to share with you is what is the government of Indonesia is doing to cope with the climate change, and second is also an expectation from NIFRI that need to do to help countries, for example Indonesia, to cope with climate change and maintain food security. And so this is just several picture the impact on climate change on food prices. Is getting higher than prices decade ago. Price fluctuation is more frequent, and also increased interaction among food commodities. This is causes that is just quoted from ADB, so I think a second speaker is already mentioned about it. But I think our concern is, of course, on the hunger and nutrition, because the impact will be more on young people. And in Indonesia, especially on MDG achievement, we are still lagging on nutrition, and this is a very huge burden. And Indonesia now is trying to work with the local government. You can imagine, 500 more of district government now, decentralized development to really maintain nutrition status, especially for young people. So price volatility will have a huge impact on this. In the case of Indonesia, I think from the production perspective, we know that rice production is limitedly increased. I mentioned limitedly because recently the price and the production is not as higher as we expect. Even though and also shows in the GDP contribution in agriculture, which was increased only 2.9 in 2010, and much of it is influenced by food production. And a little bit sharing on not what to do actually, what are we as the government of Indonesia doing. 5 or 6 measures that we do. Of course, it's making food production stronger in the in the situation of climate change. This is getting harder, but we try very hard to do this. A lot of measures I think we do in this, increasing productivity, also utilize more land that is still idle, and also improving irrigation, because at the micro level irrigation is also very much need to be revitalized. Second is also make food production is still comparatively profitable. Subsidy on rice production is still maintained because we wanted to really support small farmers, because most rice producers are small farmers, to really maintain rice production. And we recently also launched the Presidential Decree number 5, 2011, which basically providing safety net for food producers, and also other measures to really help farmers in coping with climate change situation. Of course, this is just launched, and so we really need a lot of coordination to really materialize this. Third is make food production adapt with climate change. We do already have, I will explain later on what we also try to cope with climate change, but climate change adaptation is already mainstream. The second speaker mentioned about integration between mitigation and adaptation, and I think the Vice Minister for Agriculture is also mentioned that adaptation is actually more important than just mitigation. And in this, sustainable food production is also the thing that we are trying to do to help farmers. On the demand side, we also try to strengthen food stock. We know price volatility is really need safe level of food stock. So we try our best to strengthen food stock so that food access for people are really increased. 5 is lessen burden on food production. We do have measures on food diversification, try to increase food availability of non-rice food, because high dependency on rice consumption is still very high in Indonesia, and so food diversification is also a key to maintain food security. 6 is also increase food access. Logistic, climate change is also influencing food distribution. Some area because the flood and also other natural calamities already increase the destruction on infrastructure, for example, and so food distribution is also very much influenced by that. We still have also food support for poor household. This is we still maintain that, and some other thing is also you mentioned by the DG of IFPRI. Indonesia also have the what is this, the CCT, conditional cash transfer, to really keep the student for the and babies from the poor household are really able to be still in school and have a good food. I shared you a little bit on what the Indonesian government do with regard to the climate change. As following the President commitment on the G20 and also in the COP15 to reduce the greenhouse emission by 26 with own effort and 41% with international support, Indonesian government already formulated the national action plan on this greenhouse emission. This action plan actually laid down the sort of the target for reduction emission in the 5 key areas, mainly in the forestry and peatland, which now we already also elaborated that into the REDD action plan, which is now coordinated by the task force of REDD within the office of the President. And second is also reduction emission on the agriculture. Third, energy sector, which is power and transportation, industry, and also waste. From this, actually, we are now formulating the national mitigation and also national mitigation of the climate change. So I do also agree with the, in the agricultural sector, as mentioned also by the Vice Minister for Agriculture, that the discussion on the climate change to myself is very much biased to mitigation. So more adaptation should be the one that we are doing, especially in the area of agriculture, for example, because more people are affected and they really need support on how to really adapt with this new situation. The other thing is also that with this climate change national action of greenhouse emission, Indonesia also already have the ICCTF, the Indonesian Climate Change Trust Fund, which actually try to coordinate all of the international support to cope with the climate change in this 5 sectors. With that, Indonesia also, through this ICCTF, we also provide the Indonesia Policy Forum for this, because we know that a lot of initiative, not just by the government, by the people of Indonesia, but it's also supported by the international community. So a coordination forum is very much needed. And I think this policy forum already received a lot of welcome and support from our colleague. So next to caption, I would mention about the challenge. We know that action plan is already there, but of course challenge is on the implementation. This climate change, or if we may that, emission and also carbon trading, for example, is a new thing. I mean, it used to be abstract. It used to be, put in a qualitative form. Now quantification is there, and so data, measurement, evaluation, I think, is a key. Second is also on the monitoring and verification. How can you monitor something that you can trade but you cannot really touch? This is the the very important thing. Third is the mechanism of transaction. Nowadays, 500 districts, for example, already try to really welcome these activities. What if I maintain my forest and then how much that I can claim? How much is the compensation that I can get from that? So mechanism of transaction is also a key. There are examples in the global area, the mechanism of transaction, and of course, probably the transaction has to be simple enough that the data required for that is also should be simple enough to be collected, especially for Indonesia in the district level. Fourth, Indonesia is also considering that now decentralization is already in Indonesia, so local implementation is the key. So now we are with the local government, we'll try to help them to formulate a local action plan on this green gas house emission, so that they can really plan what to do to cope with this situation. And of course, with all of these new things, a capacity building is also needed. Another aspect, I think this is an opportunity also for agriculture, because the increased development on gas, for example, in Indonesia, we now on energy, we are still very much depend on fossil fuel, for example. We now try to diversify the energy sources from gas and geothermal, and so there is an opportunity also for supply more fertilizer for agriculture. But at the same time, there is also, the fifth area on climate change is waste treatment, and waste is also not just reduce emission, but it's also providing organic fertilizer. May not be as massive as fertilizer produced from chemical, but I think this is also an opportunity for farmers to really have new sources, which is also very much related with livestock development, which mean also sources of income and growth. Third is sustainable agriculture practices. This is, the area of adaptation. So I think, if PRI also need to really support on this, and the opportunity for this is also organic product, which is, I think, in the developed countries is also very much developed already. Some expectation from IFPRI contribution is, of course, revitalized research. One is for production, of course. If we do consider a green revolution in the 70s as a big bang, I think we need another big bang right now, with regard to the climate change situation, also globalization. If we used to be, the green revolution is just about seed, it's just about activities in the farm level. Nowadays, I think with market globalization, the key is also how to put food from the market to the table. So the challenge is not just in the production level, but it's also on the marketing level. So global market understanding and how a country should respond is also important, because we know, people discuss already about climate change impact and how a country should respond to this. But I think a capacity and support for countries to deal with this is a little bit lacking on that. Third is global food reserve as an emergency support. I think in Southeast Asia we do have an ASEAN food reserve yet, and probably with market globalization we also need to have a global food reserve as an emergency support. What if private do not provide food for a country to import? What can a country do to really maintain their food security, for example? And last is a country support to strengthen capacity to maintain food security and farmers' welfare. South and South cooperation is already mentioned, and I think triangle cooperation where developed countries really facilitate South and South cooperation is the key. Government of Indonesia already mentioned the importance of South and South cooperation and triangular cooperation in the G20 forum, and is also in other forum. And I think as an input how to strengthen this and how to implement and help the developing countries to really able to share experience, also together increase the capacity to cope with climate change and to maintain food security is needed. With that, I will stop right here. Thank you very much.